Have you ever wanted to learn C++ but didn't know where to start? In this series, we're going to build a complete monster battle simulator from scratch. By the end of this series, you'll have a game where you can choose your own monster, battle enemies, and defeat the Dragon King, all while learning C++ step by step. The best part is you don't need any programming experience. I'll explain everything as we go, so let's get started. Before we can build the game, we first need to set up our development environment. I've already made a separate setup tutorial, so if you haven't installed Visual Studio Code and the C++ compiler yet, you can find the link in the description below. Once you're done, come back here and continue with the series. Alright, once we're ready, let's write our first C++ program. By the end of this episode, we'll have the first screen of our monster battle simulator where the player can choose their starter monster. I'll start by creating a new folder called Monster Battle Simulator, but you can name it whatever you want. Next, I'll open Visual Studio Code. Then I'll open the Monster Battle Simulator folder that we just created. Okay, so over here in the Explorer panel, I'll create a new file and let's name it main.cpp. The .cpp extension tells the compiler that this is a C++ source file. By convention, most C++ programs start with a file named main.cpp because it contains the entry point of our program. Let's start from the very first line. The include directive tells the compiler that we want to use a header file. You can think of a header file as something that gives our program access to additional features. In this case, iostream gives us access to input and output, such as printing text to the console. Next, we have int main function. Every C++ program starts executing from the main function. When you run your program, this is the first function that the computer executes. You can think of it as the starting point of your application. Below that, we have those curly braces. These braces define the body of the main function. Any code that we want the computer to execute should be written between these braces. Now let's take a look at this line. This line is responsible for displaying text on the console. The word cout stands for character output. Whenever we want to print something on the screen, we'll use std cout. You might be wondering what is std::. For now, just think of std as the standard library in C++. It contains many useful things that we'll use throughout this series, such as cout, cin, and string. You'll see std::, quite often, so don't worry if it feels unfamiliar right now. Next, we have these two less than signs. This is called the stream insertion operator. That's a technical name, but you don't have to memorize it. For now, just remember that it sends whatever is on the right to cout, so it gets printed on the console. Finally, we have this text inside double quotation marks. This is called a string literal. Simply put, it's just text that we want our program to display exactly as it is. Before we move on, let's make a small change. I'll add another cout statement. Notice that each message appears on a separate line. That's because of /n. The /n is called a new line character. It tells the program to move the cursor to the next line before printing the next output. One last thing you may have noticed is that these lines end with a semicolon. In C++, a semicolon marks the end of a statement. You can think of it like a period at the end of a sentence in English. It tells the compiler that this instruction is complete. Most statements in C++ end with a semicolon, so you'll be typing it quite often. Without a semicolon, the compiler doesn't know where the statement ends, so it reports an error. Let's put it back. Now the program works. The last line is return 0. This tells the operating system that our program finished successfully. You'll see this line in many C++ programs. For now, just leave it at the end of the main, and we'll learn more about it later. Now that we understand how our first C++ program works, let's make our welcome screen look a little more exciting. I'll speed this part up since we're just changing the text that's being displayed. If you'd like to use the exact same title, I've included it in the description below, so feel free to copy and paste it into your own project. And here's the result. That already looks much more like the beginning of a game. Congratulations, you've just written your very first C++ program. And the next episode will make our program interactive. Instead of only displaying text, we'll allow the player to enter their name and choose their very first monster. Along the way, we'll learn about variables and how to accept input from the keyboard using stdcin. I'll see you in the next episode.